Welcome to ET Studios AI Horizons in association with ETCIO. Today we have the pleasure of hosting Nitin Seth, who is the co-founder and CEO of Incedo. That's a high-growth technology services firm specializing in data, technology, AI and analytics solutions. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Very happy to be here, Shilpa.
Absolutely our pleasure. And you've held such decorated top management roles, be it as the COO of Flipkart or the director of Fidelity International in the country. You were also with McKinsey. You've had access to some of the richest data. You know, what sparked off your interest in AI, considering you've also written a national bestseller about it?
Yeah. I've been very fortunate, Shilpa, that my professional journey, I graduated from IIM Lucknow in '96, joined McKinsey. This was really the start of the digital kind of era, the digital age, and I had a great opportunity of working on some of the cutting edge, digital-oriented work that was happening in India then. And then I left McKinsey and I set up a dot-com startup. Which soon became like a dot-com bust. But the interesting thing was I learned a lot about digital and how this whole world is evolving. And then I went back to McKinsey and I led McKinsey's Knowledge Center, where I really got into data in a very deep fashion. And that's where I also set up analytics as a global service for McKinsey. And analytics is really the precursor of AI. So, between analytics and AI, it's kind of a little bit of a, they're on the same continuum. So I would say that that's where, from McKinsey and kind of, my, very close involvement with analytics that I really got deep into the space. And later I came to Flipkart, where I was the chief operating officer, and Flipkart and e-commerce business more generally is very data rich, and also one of the front runners in using AI. So yeah, I think a combination of these factors.
Sir, you have been deeply entrenched in AI by your own confession. But when you saw the world waking up to AI and catching up to it, what do you think has been the watershed moment for us when it comes to AI?
I think it is undoubtedly the release of ChatGPT. Undoubtedly. AI has been happening for a long time, maybe 30-40 years. And again, I said analytics and AI, what we are calling AI today, a lot of it, is what we knew as analytics. So it has been happening. A lot of it was a little complex. So you had to be a specialist to deal with it. Yeah. Also, it was not easy to make happen, because the main ingredient for AI is data. And often that data was not available. So you could not really do AI. So a lot of my client work, AI was driven not by where it made sense, but where data was available. But ChatGPT changed a lot of that. Now again, the experiments around generative AI have been happening for a number of years, and by multiple companies, not just OpenAI. But bringing it, making it a consumer proposition, and bringing the power of LLMs and generative AI to the common public, I think has been a real tipping point. Yeah. And I think now the AI genie is well and truly off the bottle. And it has really captured the public consciousness. But not just that, substantively, AI plus Gen AI, they kind of complement each other. Yeah. And together, the possibilities with AI are significantly more than was the case with AI alone.
Yes, with generative AI, of course, the possibilities are more and endless now, and especially because you help companies adopt AI, build AI, embrace digital transformation. Sir, what do you think has been the sort of growth, not just in smaller companies, but even in the bigger ones, with the widespread adoption of AI by even the common man?
Yeah. So, so companies are trying to figure it out. There are, and especially this phenomena of generative AI, and how do you see AI companies have been experimenting with for a number of years. Yeah. Now, there are three type of broad initiatives happening. The first are customer facing. That, how do we improve the proposition for the customer? A lot of that is about hyper personalization. Personalization has been happening for a long time, but now it is, how do you get to hyper personalization
at scale?
At scale, and which is an amazing thing, because so far, in industry, we have had that, okay, scale means standardization. Now with AI and generative AI, you can have personalization and scale going together. So a lot happening around that, and it is both around trying to sell new products and services, trying to sell more, but also on the customer service side, there are many changes happening. So there are a whole bunch of things which are about improving the customer experience, improving the customer service, eventually to increase revenues and customer satisfaction. There are perhaps even more initiatives which are less visible. The customer side you probably see. There are probably, for every one initiative on the customer side, maybe there are 3 or 4 on the internal side, which are about automation, which are about operational efficiency. Again, in kind of back office operations, customer service, this has been happening. Automation has been happening. But with generative AI, a very big push is happening in the entire technology development process, what we call SDLC, the software development life cycle. That's a big one. That's a big one. I think especially for us in India, that's a big one, because tech industry is a very big industry for us. So there is tremendous level of experimentation happening, that the entire software development process. How can generative AI, things like Copilot or Google's Gemini, how can they increase the productivity there tremendously? So customer facing, internal, both operations and software development. And then there are companies also trying to figure out that how do we bring these two together to create new business models. And I think that's where maybe the younger companies are kind of more are ahead. I think the larger companies are still trying to figure it out. At this point, I think it is fair to say that there are a lot of proof of concept. But I think we are still maybe 12, 18 months away from prime time. So all the excitement and activity hasn't yet translated into real business impact.
So since you have a macro view of the picture, can you also talk me through these fears that people have about jobs disappearing? You in fact told me jobs are going to increase in the next 2 years, and then that's when the real problem will happen. That's when after that, you said 50% of jobs might go away, but also in the long term, right? As we move up the value chain, so will AI. How do you envision this going forward?
It's a very significant impact, and we don't fully know it yet, or we haven't spent enough time understanding it. There is a lot of effort being put on the technology, the adoption of that technology by enterprises, both small and large. But the organization and human implications of that, we are not spending enough time. We need to spend a lot more time on that. So the impact of on jobs, I would put into 3 time horizons: short term, medium term, long term. Short term, over the next 2 years, it's possible jobs might increase, especially for the tech industry, because for example, in my company, I know that maybe over the next 2-3 years, there may be I may need to deliver somewhere between a 10 to 20% productivity improvement for my clients. That means that much work goes down. But 30, 40, 50% of my work is likely to be AI and data related. So what I am going to lose, I'm going to gain way more than that. So that's just my microcosm. But even if I project it at this point, I think enterprises are spending more on AI than the actual financial benefit they're getting from it. So if they're spending more, it means that jobs are increasing somewhere, right? Now, if I take a 3 to 5 year view, my research and data suggests that it is kind of going to be even Stevens. In that period, maybe the job losses maybe 10-15% more than the jobs created. So we will start to see a real pinch. Some sectors more than others.
Which sectors, sir?
Look, manufacturing, operations, customer service, tech services. So that's why I said that for us in India, it's a real issue. Yeah.
Because we provide all these
We provide all of that
services
because
to
a
the
lot
world.
of our business models, especially where we are serving the world, we are not providing intellectual property. We are providing
Manpower.
labor, manpower. Now, high quality talent and all of that. But end of the day, it is manpower.
Yes.
Yeah. And so far, the advancements in technology around, let's say, RPA, robotic process automation and all of those things had not impacted much. Yeah. But this is a different ball game. So the really human intensive work, I think, will get impacted. But still, if I take the macro view, it's kind of even Stevens.
Okay.
Yeah. But longer term, I think it will be a very significant impact. And why is that? Because see, with AI, we already saw that that some of the fundamental human competencies, what is it that it means to be a human, was getting challenged, and it was the self-learning, adaptive aspect. Yeah, because traditionally a system or technology was very, there is a logic, there is an input, and there is an output. Simple. Yeah. Now with AI, it was self-learning. It was adaptive.
It's filling in the gaps, which is the main advantage and the concern.
Yeah, and it was also that we are interacting. Yeah, and based on my response, your questions change.
Yeah.
Isn't it? You have a script, but your questions change.
Yeah.
And now AI can do that. AI can do that. Now with generative AI, you go like 2 steps forward. First is you can generate content. Yeah. So if Nitin was not there and you asked a question, the generative AI would still give an answer. It may not be as contextualized as what I'm giving, but it will give some answers. So it has the ability to create content. The next one, which is really fundamental, Shilpa, is that generative AI is able to drive problem identification. Now, in any problem-solving process, the most important thing is zoning down on the problem, which is the toughest part. Once you do that, then certainly a lot of the analysis and all of that data crunching machines can do. But the problem identification is the core, right? Now, what's happening with generative AI is that because it has all the data of the world has been brought in. Yeah. Now, AI needed data to do something. Generative AI data has already there. So therefore, it has the ability to very quickly come up with a 40 to 60% answer. Now, it's not 90%, so you can't really act on it. But at least you are able to narrow down. So that, I think, is tremendous. We haven't yet got our heads around it. Yeah. So these are some very fundamental things that if I look at, okay, self-learning, tick. Generate content, create content, tick. Problem identification, tick. So I really, really wonder that 10, 15 years into the future, most jobs, I think every job will get impacted. Yeah. And that's where I talked about the 50% scenario. But I think that's something, there is maybe research happening in the universities. But I think on a more practical basis, we haven't got our heads around to it. I think you were also mentioning that we are so busy in the immediate term that we're not thinking about the long term. And that's what I really worry about. Because if 50% of jobs may go in even 10, 15 years, it's a huge number. It's a huge number. Where will those people go? We have to start thinking about it now. So it may sound a little alarmist. So while I think short term may actually be positive, medium term may be fine, but the longer term, I think we need to start thinking about now.
Yeah, and we need to get off our hamster wheels and actually devote some time to this, right? Because all our questions are always about the immediate repercussion, what's going to happen in the market today, what's going to happen to our stocks tomorrow. But for the human chain in the near future. 10, 15 years is really close by. If you look at even our long-term holdings, it's going to have a significant impact on our entire world, right? But you've written this book, Mastering the Data Paradox, on AI, which delves into all of this. But my question is very fundamental in that. Can you explain the data paradox to us?
Yeah, so very simple, simple rhyme which you would know very well. Water, water everywhere, yet not a drop to drink. Yeah. So on one hand, you have a data deluge. On another hand, you have an insights drought. So that's the core paradox. You have these two contradictory situations, which is the deluge and the drought happening at the same time. Yeah. So that's the central paradox. That's the central paradox that we see in data. But there are many paradoxes in data. Yeah. You have on one hand a great opportunity around data democratization. That data is now available to everybody. There is so much data. But with that, the concerns around data security increase. The more you make available, the more is the risk of it being used wrongly. Earlier we were talking at an individual level about digital engagement and data privacy. That's also a paradox. Yeah. If you take it to a more macro perspective, there is a great possibilities with data collaboration across nations. We saw that with COVID, how sharing data can lead to better outcomes. And if you look at big problems like climate change or terrorism, it certainly will mean global data sharing. But at the same time, there is a risk of data colonization, yeah, or data as a source of competitive advantage. So we can keep going with that. There are so many paradoxes with data. So sometimes we put it that, oh, is it a blessing and a curse? And I don't like to put it as blessing and curse, but there are definitely two aspects of data, where it creates a tremendous opportunity, but can also be a huge challenge. And when I see with my clients, what I see is that the ones who are the most successful are the ones who are able to use data extremely well. And the ones who struggle with digital and AI are the ones who are not able to master data. So that's where I felt that paradox and mastering the data paradox was perhaps a good way of framing the conversation around data.
Earlier, whoever had access to data would be the most knowledgeable, right? But now in our information overload era, where we have access to more information than man had in his entire lifetime, I think the art is, of course, managing and using that data well. Because a company that's struggling may not necessarily have no access to data or lesser access to data. It's just they're not mining the right insights from it.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's very well said. There is, again, there is the data democratization.
Yeah.
So earlier, just access to data, because data was so scarce, just access to data was power. But that is not the case anymore. So in fact, it is like data abundance is too much of it, and therefore the key skill is to figure out what is relevant. Yeah. And we were earlier talking that in a data scarce world, you would start by really thinking hard about the problem. You would develop a hypothesis based on that, and then you will try to find some data, and you will get maybe not all of it, some data. Now that world or that approach has been completely turned on its head, 180 degrees. Now because you have so much data, all the energy is going on bringing that data together through a technology solution, and then build some fancy large model on top of that, some customer 360 model or something. In that, the link of data and what is the problem that we are trying to solve has become very weak, has become very tenuous. And that's actually, you're hitting to the essence of what I've talked about in the book, right? The way to break this paradox is that, so now what we are seeing is that the approach to data has become very technology, has been very, okay, let me get all of this together. Once it is together, I will do something smart with it. That doesn't work, because the deluge is too much. It's a tsunami, it's going to overwhelm you. So the technology approach has to be balanced or you can call it a physical approach, has to be balanced with a more logical approach. What is the problem I'm looking to solve? How do I break down that problem? And what data I need for that? That paradoxically, to make sense of big data, you have to narrow the data. Otherwise, the deluge will just sweep you away.
And this deluge of data, a big contributor of it is us as well, because of our presence on the social media networks, billions of people here giving out all our information for free, right? So our data is being used in ways like never before, some to aid us, a lot of times against us as well. How is this going to develop in the coming years, and are there going to be any safeguards for people and their data?
It's a big topic. It's a big topic, and it's a very, very big issue. Yeah, that I think at an enterprise level, the biggest issue is probably about data quality and data security. But at an individual level, it is data privacy.
I've learned a lot from this interview. It's been very enriching indeed. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
No, thank you, and a pleasure talking to you.
An absolute pleasure, and the honor is entirely ours. Thank you. And thank you for watching ET Studios AI Horizons in association with ETCIO. And for more such insightful conversations with experts, remember to stay tuned.